Welcome back, students. Let us continue with our chapter number 6, The Age of the Guptas. Children, in yesterday's video, I have already started this chapter. The Age of Guptas, which is also known as your classical age or the golden age in Indian history. And talking about the sources, so we have two sources, that is your literary source as well as the archaeological source. uh, the sources in which the important one is we have to study is your accounts of Fahim, as well as in the chapter you will also find the mention of one of the other Chinese traveler, that is your Hyun Sang. Okay, so even Hyun Sang's accounts, so that is also important, as well as you will also find the mention of Kalidasa. So from the work of Kalidasa also we get information about the Gupta age. So, though yesterday I have already explained, but still, as for your revision, let me take a small revision, a quick revision for the sources. So, talking about the sources of this accounts of Fahim, he was a Chinese pilgrim who visited India, and he visited and observed many places like Mathura, Kannauj, Kapilvastu, Kushinagar, Vaishali, Patliputra, Kashi and Rajgre, as well as he observed minutely the condition of India at that time, and he found that Magad was a prosperous country with large towns, as well as the population was also quite wealthy. Patliputra was a developed city, and even people they led very simple life, though they were wealthy, but since they followed Buddhism, so that is why they led very simple life. As well as he also mentioned that many other religions like Vaishnavism, Shaivism, along with Buddhism and Jainism, that were also equally popular, and the people of different religion, they used to respect each other. As well as you also mentioned that images of Hindu gods could be seen on which were depicted on the coins, as well as in sculptures and paintings also. Okay, and regarding the punishment, that means the penal code, so that was very mild and were in the forms of fines. Okay, so this was about your accounts of Fahim. Now the next source which we have discussed yesterday was your Allahabad, this pillar inscription. Allahabad pillar inscription, children, which is also known as your pra, Prayag Prashasti. Okay, so it is also called as Prayag Prashasti. Why? Because Allahabad's earlier name is your Prayag. So Prashasti, which means that it is built in order to praise Samudragupta. And who is Samudragupta? Samudragupta is the son of Chandragupta first. And Samudragupta, he is also known as your Napoleon of India. So talking about this, another important source of age of Gupta, that is Allahabad pillar inscription. Since it is important, that is why I am making you to revise. So for your revision, I am repeating that this inscription of Allahabad pillar, it is also known as your Prayag Prashasti. Next you have to remember in this is that it praises Samudragupta, who is the son of Chandragupta first, the founder of Gupta dynasty. Okay, and he was one of the most strongest Gupta rulers because he was famous as your Napoleon of India. And this Prayag Prashasti, it was composed by a poet named Hari Sen. He was the court poet of Samudragupta, and he had praised in Sanskrit language because that was the language which was famous. As well as what else you find in which are the things which are inscripted on this pillar. You will find that he described the kingdom of Samudragupta, as well as he also mentioned, he describes about the different uh, many of the wars which Samudragupta he had won. So he had mentioned that how Samudragupta first defeated the northern rulers, and then further he moved towards the southern rulers, and after conquering on southern rulers, he even allowed them to rule, but took tributes from them. Okay, as well as many other tribes surrendered their kingdom to Samudragupta. And after these victories, yesterday I missed some of the points which I want you to remember, that which is already mentioned in the book. You may have a look. Okay, so after these victories, children, he even performed Ashwamedh Yaj. Okay, Ashwamedhya, that means the horse sacrifice. So he conducted that also, so because it is mentioned in the Prayag Prashasti pillar, so that is why I have to tell. So he also performed, after these victories, he performed Ashwamedh Yajna and even issued gold coins depicting sacrificial horse. Okay. It also describes that Samudragupta, he was a music lover. Okay. There were some other coins seen where he is shown playing veena. So like this way, here in this Prayag Prashasti, there many talents about Samudragupta has been mentioned. That he was not only a brave warrior, as well as he was a great ruler, a great musician. Even he was very good in playing the veena. Okay. So now today what we have to discuss. Today we are going to move to the next topic, which is the topic of discussion, the discussion of the golden age of Indian culture, that is given on page number 63. Okay. So there you will find that at the very beginning para, it tells you the reason that why Gupta age is known as your Indian, this golden age. So the reason given here is the Gupta period is described as the golden age of Indian culture because of the high level of civilization and culture of this period. Okay. Along with the revival of Hinduism, the power of creativity was unleashed in the fields of education, literature, arts, architecture, and science. So, like this way, there was not only revival in the religion as well as in different other fields. Also, there was great creativity as well as many other new things were introduced. So, like this way, this period also saw the extension of this influence beyond India's frontiers. And since everything flourished in such an abundance that it crossed the Indian borders also. Okay, children? So now talking about the education. So education was given one. Education was the thing which was most highlighted part of the Gupta period because it was they emphasized more on imparting education. So during the Gupta age, children, you will find that education was given utmost importance. Okay, this is evident from the intellectual output in various fields like literature, science, mathematics, astronomy, astrology, and medicine. So, education was given in these fields. So, these many subjects were taught to the people. People in the sense that to the students. There were many centers of learning in cities like Patliputra, Vallabhi, Ujjain, Ayodhya, and Nasik. So here when we talk about the education, so these things you have to remember. Centers of learning. So these are the name, children. Patliputra, Vallabhi, Ujjain, Ayodhya, Nasik. So these were the most famous places for education. Now according to the inscriptions, the teachers were learned Brahmins. So the most intelligent Brahmins, the most intellectual teachers of Brahmin caste, so they were considered as the teachers, and the teachers were known by different names like Acharyas, Upadhyayas, or Bhatts. Okay, so they were named by these several names. So these titles were given to the teachers, and these teachers were supported by the grant of villages called the Agraharas. Okay, so the teachers, they were supported by the grant, that means the donation given by different villages, which was the donation given by different villages. It was called as your Agraharas. Okay, so Agraharas is the term, that means the donation given or the grants given by the villages to support education or to support the teachers. Now, what else? It was also given by the Gupta rulers and charities given by generous public. So Agraharas, that means grants, it was not only given by the villagers as well as the rulers, the Gupta rulers, and even the generous public, that means the rich and wealthy people. The disciples, now talking about the students, the disciples were called as Shishyas. Okay, so they were known as Shishyas. They had to learn 14 sections of science. That means Chaturdash Vidya. Okay. So the disciples who were called as Shishya, so they had to study 14 sections of science. So this 14 sections of science was known as your Chaturdash Vidya. Comprising, now In this Chaturdash Vidya, which things were included, which subjects were included? The four Vedas, six Vedangas, the Puranas, the Mimamsa, Nyaya and Dharma, besides Vyakaran. So Vyakaran, that means whose Vyakaran? Ashtadhyayi or Panini. So Ashtadhyayi or Panini, that was included, and the Mahabharata. So during that time we had to remember Mahabharata. So since it was the Gupta period, was the time of the revival in Hinduism. So that is why the greatest epics of the Hinduism, even that too was also revived. And during this Gupta period, so there is the mention of the composition of 100 poems together. So like this way, which is called as your Satasashri Satasahashri Samhita. So this Satasahashri Samhita, which is your Mahabharata. Okay. So like this way we get information that all these subjects any student, any pupil had to, it was a must for them to study. As well as in the Gupta period, the Jain and Buddhist systems of education assumed a different dimensions. Okay. So during this period, while some of the students, they were busy in studying, or they were involved in studying about the revival of Hinduism, about the studying about the Hindu text. So by the same time, even there used to be Jain and Buddhist education system also, but they had different aspect. Like Buddhist monasteries admitted students for 10 years. Now Buddhist monastery, that means those places, the Buddhist learning places where the Buddhist monk will go stay and he will learn all the teachings of Buddhism, the principles of Buddhism, so that finally after becoming a Buddhist monk, he can go outside and propagate about his religion. So that was your monasteries. So Buddhist monasteries, they used to take their students at the age for almost 10 years. Okay. Learning began with the oral method. And what was the method of teaching? It was oral. Later they shifted to the reading of literary texts. So in the monasteries, earlier it was taught in oral form, and later it was converted, or it was shifted to reading of the literary text. The monasteries had libraries. So these Buddhist monasteries, they also had libraries. Important manuscripts were copied and stored, so that many other generation, it could be passed to further generation, as well as it could be taken to different other places. Students from other countries like China, Southeast Asia came to the Buddhist monasteries for education. We have to remember Buddhism had spread to many parts of the world. Okay, so that is why the Buddhist students, so they were attracted and they came to India and they used to study in Buddhist monasteries for getting education. The monasteries were normally maintained by grants for kings and the rich mercantile class. So we have to remember that though the Gupta rulers, they adopted Hinduism, but still they were patient enough, or they were generous enough to see after the welfare of the other religions also. Okay, so that means they were having this tolerance tendency, we can say, because here it is clearly mentioned that even the Buddhist monasteries also, they were also granted, they were also given grants by the rulers as well as the rich mercantile class. That means the rich businessmen, the traders. They attracted scholars from far and near. Fahim also spent several years in the monastery at Patliputra studying Buddhist religious books. So Fahim, the accounts of Fahim, which is the most important source, one of the most important sources of knowledge about the Guptas. So even he had reached from China. He had came from China, and then he spent several years studying in the monastery, and in which monastery, which was located at Patliputra. Okay, and he studied Buddhist religious books. Even higher education was given equal importance during the Gupta age, as is evident from a number of universities existed during this period. Children, now we will talk about the universities which were famous in the Gupta age. They were your Takshila and Nalanda University. Okay. So, the Takshila University, it was one of the first few centers in the world which offered higher education. So, we can say this was the oldest university. Okay. As well as talking about the Nalanda. So, about Nalanda University, we have to study in detail. So this university, that means the Takshila University, was however established before the Gupta Empire came into existence. So we have to remember that Takshila University, it was already established and students they used to study before many age, we can say many time before, much more time before than the Gupta rulers. Okay. Now let's move to the Nalanda University. So now the next is your Nalanda University, which was the most renowned educational institution of ancient India. Okay, after your Takshila University, the most important, since it is included in our syllabus, Nalanda University, so we have to study about this in detail. So, very first thing you have to remember is that it was the most renowned universities of ancient India. First point you have to remember. And talking about the location, that where it was located. It was located at Nalanda, which is almost 100 kilometers far from Patna, the real Patna. Okay, it was located at Nalanda and Rajgriha in Bihar. Okay, as well as a lot of information about the Nalanda University is given in the inscriptions and in the accounts of Yun Sang, a Chinese Buddhist scholar who visited India during the reign of Harshvardhana. So we have to remember that Yun Sang, he came to India during the reign of Harshvardhana and he had studied the Buddhist texts while being the student of Nalanda University. Okay, and he had also mentioned about the grandness of Nalanda University. So through his accounts, we come to know that how grand this university actually was. Okay, so that is why his inscriptions is very important, because it gives us clear information about this university. Now let's talk more about this university, children. The University of Nalanda had imposing buildings. What does it mean? That it has many buildings and it was enclosed. This Nalanda University, it was enclosed by walls. There were at least 8 colleges. So number of colleges which were present in Nalanda University, there were 8 colleges. Okay. So remember this thing, there were 8 colleges as well as there were 3 libraries also. We will study about them also right now. So there were at least 8 colleges built by different patrons, including one by Balaputra Dev, king of Sumatra. So there were at least 8 colleges and these 8 colleges were built by different patrons. Different patrons means different rulers, and among all the other buildings, among all the other colleges, there was one college which was built by king of Sumatra. Sumatra means Indonesia, the current Indonesia. So it was built by uh, Balaputra Dev. So Balaputra Dev, he was the king of Sumatra. Okay. According to Yun Sang, the whole university area was enclosed by a brick wall. So according to by studying the accounts of this Yun Sang, we have come to know that Nalanda University, it was the whole area of university, it was enclosed, it was surrounded by huge brick walls. The Nalanda University provided various facilities to the students for their studies. And talking about the libraries, children, there were 3 great libraries and their names were Ratnasagar, Ratnodadi and Ratnaranja. So these are the names of the 3 libraries of Nalanda University. Okay. Now, what else? There were more than 10,000 students and teachers. Okay, this is one of the again wonderful thing, that in that age that more than 10,000 students as well as teachers, they used to study at this university, as well as so they came, that means the students, they used to come to have their to gain their knowledge from different nations like Korea, Mongolia, Japan, China, Tibet, Ceylon and many parts of India and many other parts of India. Okay, Ceylon here means actually Sri Lanka. Today Sri Lanka is it is the ancient name of Sri Lanka, Ceylon. So from different students from various other parts, so these nations as well as various other parts of India, they used to come to have education. Okay. Now, moving to the next page, children, now we are going to discuss about the different subjects which were taught. So, talking about the different subjects which were taught, so the subjects were, it included all the four Vedas, logic, grammar, medicine, Sankhya, yoga, Nyaya, and the Buddhist works of the different schools. Okay, children? So, like this way, it included so many variety of subjects. And what else we have to remember, that Nalanda University, it was not an ordinary university. How? It was a postgraduate institution. Wonderful thing. So Nalanda University, it used to give postgraduate certificates, we can say. So it was a postgraduate university. And what else? The admission was very difficult here. How? Because you can mention one more point, remember one more point, there used to have entrance exams, okay, and the entrance exam, it used to be very difficult. So that means the admission was quite difficult, because examination used to be held, and in that examination hardly 20% of students they used to pass. So in that time the admission procedure, it was very tough, and out of all the entries only 20% students they managed to get the admission, okay, and the rest, whatever number of entries used to come, so it was totally, so they were rejected. Okay, so that means we can say that only the best one, or only the most brilliant ones, so they got the chance to study in the Nalanda University. As well as, children, Nalanda, it continued to be a beacon of light. So like this way, it gave, the university, it gave many bright students, as well as, so it gave light in different aspects of life, as well as we will say that it flourished up to 12th century AD, until it was destroyed by, so it was destroyed by whom? It was destroyed by Muhammad bin Bakhtiyar Khilji. So who is this Muhammad bin Bakhtiyar Khilji? He was a general of Muhammad Ghori. Okay. So by the instruction of Muhammad Ghori, Muhammad bin Bakhtiyar Khilji, who was the general of Muhammad Ghori, so he destroyed. Okay. So Muhammad Khilji, so by his order it was destroyed, and today only the remainings of its magnificence and glory can be seen. So today if you will go to Nalanda University, and if you will find, so the old or the original Nalanda University, it is in the ruined condition. Okay, because at that time, so while it was destroyed, all the libraries, so it was totally burnt away. So like this way, so that we lost, like this way we lost such great we can say glory, or such a great inscription, or the records of our ancient India. So like this way today we actually we lack such kind of university, but it's due to the government effort, we would say, children. Again, due to the government efforts, again the studies had started. So again there is re-establishment of Nalanda University. It is not similarly as the old or the ancient one, but it is very different, because it's related to the today's world. So like this way today I'll conclude till here only, and in the next video I'll be discussing the remaining topics of this chapter. Let's meet tomorrow. Till then, take care.